Welcome to the Warning Track Power Hour. I am Dr. Andrew Scaff. He is Dr. Michael Warman, Esquire. We'll get into our second part of our four-part Royals preview for the season. We'll be talking about the bullpen today and the overhaul that's gone on with that part of the team in the offseason. And what maybe give some expectations as to what we think will happen over the course of this new season. But we'll kick off today's show with some NFL news. I think just in the last couple of days, the Denver Broncos have, I don't know, either leaked information or at least told Russell Wilson that they will be releasing him before the season starts and eating his $85 million remaining salary as a dead cap hit. Mike, have you had a coworker say, without naming names, that you would have been willing to pay $85 million to have them no longer work with you?
Could I be that coworker? That's the
You
only one I
volunteer to be that guy.
yeah, I would take $85 million not to work with. I don't I if I wouldn't pay anybody that much. Even I because I certainly wouldn't give my worst enemy $85 million,
Right.
you know. So I'd only give a friend $85 million not to work with me. So and I'd rather give it to me than somebody else. That's but I guess there are people I have been associated with, although I haven't really quite had coworker jobs for the most part in my career since I've been teaching and I do my own thing. So there's not like somebody that's always around or in your like
Yeah, you wouldn't interact with somebody enough that they could get that much
yeah,
under your skin or something that you'd be
yeah,
willing to go that far out of your way to
certain
they're no
bosses, I
longer
guess,
associated with
maybe,
you.
or supervisors or something, but nothing. Yes, it's mostly been independent work, and so yeah. How about you? You've had some people in your lab that I think you've, uh,
Definitely gotten under my skin before, but
yeah.
not $85 million worth of.
I think you'd swallow the 85 million poison pill to duck out of work.
Eh, I could sell my company for $85 million, I would.
Yeah, I'd stop. Yeah, $85 million. I'd stop doing anything for $85 million.
Yeah, I don't think
Um,
that's happening though. That offer I don't think is coming in.
no,
But
no,
yeah,
I don't.
Sean Payton must have been willing to let go of 85 million of the Broncos owners' money to not have
Yeah,
Russell Wilson continue to be their quarterback for two more seasons. That seems a little surprising to me. Does that not seem surprising to you? That's a lot of
yeah.
to just walk away from.
You have to be both a very good and a very bad quarterback, I guess, to have this happen to you. Very good that you got $85 million for two
Yeah.
years, but also must have really caused something to happen to not even want to be, want Sean Payton to stomach you for two more years. Like,
Yeah.
could he not be backup? Could he not do, is there, I don't quite understand it.
Yeah.
And I don't think Russell Wilson wasn't really the problem in Denver last year. Maybe he's just a guy, he must be just some guy who irritates Sean Payton. And
Yeah.
Payton just
Well, it seemed like he'd gotten a lot of perks with his original hiring
his parking
from
space
your
and
your favorite guy Nathaniel Hackett, right? So
yeah.
maybe some of those initial perks that he was promised had still become sticking points. They weren't able to like get rid of all of them or get rid of the behavior that Sean Payton is, expecting from his quarterback out without causing any issues in the locker room. Then
He was running too many high knee drills in the
the
aisles
air.
on airplane flights.
Have you done that on your most recent air
I
travel
have not. I have
experiences?
not. No, I'm well, guess what? Guess we'll wait to be. We'll wait to see when I fly next if I do it. But um,
So do
yeah,
you
I
have
don't.
expectations as to where you think Russell Wilson may end up? He can sign anywhere. It's a weird stipulation though, like whatever his salary he signs for will go to the Broncos as compensation. So like as long as he signs for less than 39 million for this season, then he gets paid 39 million no matter what. But whatever compensation he gets, I believe, goes to the Broncos. So it's in his best interest to just sign for the league minimum somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, and I think
He'll get the
that's
39 million regardless of who he plays
yes,
for.
yeah, he has to mitigate the damages that and contract damages. That's one of the legal principles that you often will see in contracts like that. You have to at least try to get a job and to
Yeah.
lower.
I don't think he has to try, but if he does sign somewhere, then
Okay, so maybe he couldn't, he wouldn't even have to. I'm not sure,
I don't.
but
I think he could just take 2 years. But I mean, if he's not ready to retire, he shouldn't take the 2 years. Really, right?
no, it seems like I was thinking probably Pittsburgh is maybe one of the most likely. It seems like they've been in talks with him. I don't know if you heard that Pittsburgh backup and one-time number 2 overall draft pick Mitchell Trubisky signed with the Bills to be their backup. The Bills, maybe we'll talk a little about the Bills. The Bills basically got rid of all their players for salary cap reasons. It got last
Wow.
over a couple of days, but so there's Kenny Pickett there and maybe Mason Rudolph, but I would say Wilson's probably an upgrade there. Maybe you could say Wilson might be a play. There's New England, any place that doesn't draft a quarterback, or maybe drafts a quarterback they don't think is going to be ready soon. I could see him in New England. I could see him in Minnesota if Cousins leaves. I could see him in Atlanta. I think Justin Fields and Russell Westbrook maybe and Kirk Cousins, those three are kind of maybe interchangeable almost in terms of quality and where they're. I guess Cousins is probably the most desirable, but for most teams, but
Who was the second one? Drew?
Justin Fields,
Fields.
Cousins,
Okay.
and
I think you said
Fields.
Russell Westbrook, and I was like, what?
I say Westbrook. I mean, Russell Wilson.
Oh,
Wilson.
yes. Okay. Yes. Oh,
Wilson.
yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, gotcha. Yes.
Russell Wilson, Fields, and Cousins. I don't know if maybe I did say Russell Westbrook. They both are maybe have some of the same personality quirks.
Yeah.
I think they're equally maybe seen as maybe egocentric. The two Westbrook and Wilson, the two Russells.
The Russells.
But I guess maybe Las Vegas is another place where I could see Wilson ending up.
To me, that's the one that makes the most sense because especially if he feels spurned at all by the Broncos, like asking him to leave, the most obvious place to go is somewhere where he's going to face the team that just spurned him. You get to face them twice in the same year.
Yeah,
They can pay you to beat them, right? So that's why would you not try to do that at least anyway, right?
yeah, it's Las Vegas. It's a nice glitzy
Yeah.
sort of place. Maybe Wilson would like that for his celebrity.
The
Um,
expectations aren't super high there. I don't think there's really they're not expecting to go to a Super Bowl like this year, so
no, I guess they're in the market perhaps to draft a quarterback, but they're far enough back that they're not going to get
yeah.
Caleb Williams or somebody that's expected to start right away.
And they still have Devontae Adams under contract, right? So they
Yeah,
have
they've
a
Adams.
good number one wide receiver. That wouldn't be a bad, place to land for, you know, a team with like relatively low expectations and decent teammates alongside,
Yeah, it could be.
especially if you could go against the team that just irked you for the last for 2 more times in each
Hilton.
season for the next two
Yes.
years. That'd be a pretty good thing to do.
Yeah, I
They
can
can
see.
pay.
Yeah, that makes sense. So that's you're saying Las Vegas. I'm guessing that's a possibility for me. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up back in the NFC. So
Yeah.
I like Minnesota as a possibility simply because I think Minnesota has some cap issues and they're going to want to pay Justin Jefferson and they're I think probably not going to draft somebody. At least they have. I don't know. So that's my guess. I think Cousins is going to leave and I think Cousins is going to go someplace. Um, but Pittsburgh, I could also see. I could also see Vegas, but I guess you kind of wonder like how long are the all the quarterbacks going to stay in the AFC or any of the like NFC teams. I guess this year it seems like the NFC teams are going to draft quarterbacks. Um, Caleb Williams is probably going to go to the Bears or the Commanders or you know those teams. So it seems like maybe those guys are going to get um, maybe there's going to be less of a imbalance in terms of quarterback prowess in the conferences, but it seems like still it's just the AFC that's uh, getting all the talent. So
All the top end QBs
yeah,
are in the AFC, aren't they?
especially the way the draft shook out last year with Stroud being the number one by far um, over Bryce Young, and going to Carolina. So maybe Young turns it around this year, our pocket passer. I guess Russell Wilson is also a fairly short
Yeah,
quarterback. So maybe that was another reason that well, Drew Brees was pretty short, so Sean Payton worked with him.
they
But I
explained
think
that. Yeah,
Brees was over six. I think was 6 feet tall though. I think Russell Wilson's a little under 6 feet.
yeah, I think that's right.
But he has a large ego. I think worth of for a 6'5" uh, man, maybe
Maybe.
with from what I hear about Russell Wilson, but I don't, I don't. Yeah, it's hard to say where he'll end up. Um, do you have any other NFL news you want to talk about? The Chiefs have a few things that have gone on. We, it's still up in the air where Chris Jones, I guess, still in negotiations. L'Jarius Sneed, it seems like is going to be traded somewhere, perhaps Minnesota, perhaps Pittsburgh, perhaps some of these teams that we've been mentioning that have some cap space. Uh, I don't, and I guess the Chiefs will get a draft pick or two from him. Probably not as great as the Tyreek Hill trade, but maybe a second round pick or maybe even a first round pick. Do you think for
Yeah,
Snead?
yeah, they
I
should
don't.
get something relatively high. It seems like he is viewed as a franchise type player. I mean, so well, yeah, the Chiefs use the non-exclusive franchise tag on Snead, which allows him to try to work his own deal out also, which kind of helps the team a little bit.
Yeah,
They don't have to be quite so active on the front looking to trade him. Like they can let him do some of the legwork anyway. Maybe dictate his own direction wherever maybe he wants to go. Maybe he can focus on that too, which is it's kind of nice, at least anyway, from the team perspective, to allow that scenario rather than just telling a guy, "Oh, you're getting traded to this terrible place, and you have to do it."
yeah. It gives the player some input. And probably, I guess the Chiefs will only trade to a team though that gives them enough back. So like, they both
Yeah,
need to give Snead a contract and also offer enough to entice the Chiefs to trade. Um, See, maybe like Tyreek Hill, they'll have a couple of suitors and maybe and then if they get comparable picks, kind of let the player decide where he wants to go. Like, I think I think Hill was down between the Jets and the Dolphins, and I think Hill said he'd rather go to the Dolphins than to the Jets, and that's why the Chiefs ended up trading him with the Dolphins, trading partners with the Dolphins. So,
yeah,
um, but if he doesn't end up signing anywhere, I guess the Chiefs have him for 19.6 or 8 million, I think, is
oh,
the
yeah, somewhere in
guess.
there. Yeah,
But
52,
but
something like that. Yeah,
that's going to be more than what they want. Um, they're still they're in the process of signing some players now. They signed Drew Tranquil earlier on Thursday of this week. Are you glad to see Tranquil back? Was he the if you had to pick between Tranquil and Willie Gay, you could only keep one of them in terms of the linebacking position. Would you have kept Tranquil?
well, Tranquil, I mean, stepped in every time there was an injury that he stepped right into the role, no matter really who went down. So like he was, really quite the utility man in that linebacker core. So I mean, he seems to be a really valuable piece. He's probably a lot less expensive, I would assume, than what Willie Gay is gonna gonna,
Yeah, I would say
command
Gay's
on
probably going to
the open
command a little
market.
bit more.
So it seems like good value without having to step too far down in quality, if at all.
Yeah,
So
3 years, $19 million was the uh deal, I think, with 13 million guaranteed. So I guess 2 years of that kind of guaranteed. So yeah, I think that's a good. I think Tranquil was really good for the Chiefs. I think he was like a Swiss Army knife kind of player, and somebody that I think Spags really liked.
yeah,
So I think he liked, Gay's really great too. But I think Willie Gay is more maybe has more of a defined position, like an outside linebacker, than Tranquil does. You can kind of play a little bit of everything. So,
yeah,
and so maybe that's why I think the Chiefs wanted to get him. Also, maybe Tranquil's not. He was like you said, maybe he's looking for a little less money than what Gay is, and it seems like every dollar that they can save somewhere goes into maybe retaining Chris Jones or being able to bring in a free agent wide receiver or something like that. It seems like the biggest potential free agent wide receiver, Mike Evans, re-signed with the Buccaneers, so he's not available.
big contract too, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I don't remember
yeah.
what the total was, but it was. I remember hearing the number and I thought it was awfully high.
Well, it was 40. It was base of 41. 2 years, $52 million.
Yeah,
So 26, average 26 million per year, 29 million guaranteed at signing.
wow,
Um,
yeah,
so that leaves, I think, fewer options on the free agent market, but there's still some decent players out there. I think you have Calvin Ridley, maybe, if he's not gambling anymore on the NFL. Darnell Mooney had a good year with the Bears a couple years ago. Curtis Samuel's been okay. Odell Beckham, maybe he still has something, but it seems like it's a lot thinner though than it was.
yeah.
Maybe there might be some there might be some cap casualties. Maybe we'll see like Mike Williams or Keenan Allen even
Become available.
available. Yeah, but
Yeah,
they're both but they were both really good against the Chiefs. Williams especially seems like he always had a big game against
yeah,
Chiefs. But for the two Chargers um, uh, receivers. But yeah, so that's I don't know. It's just a lot of speculation mainly for the NFL
yeah.
because the NFL hasn't even had their it's not even the trade period hasn't even begun yet.
Right.
Some teams are just getting rid of salary. The Bills notably got rid of a lot of players to try to get under the cap. Tre'Davious White, Jordan Poyer, a lot of the stars on defense that they've had over the years, or they had a depleted defense already last year compared to some years before, and now it seems like it's going to be more depleted. So maybe the window is starting to close because they're paying Allen as much as the Chiefs are paying Mahomes now.
Mm.
So um, Cincinnati maybe has one more year of a lot of money, but then they start to paying Jamar Chase and T. Higgins got franchise tag, so he's probably not going anywhere either. So yeah,
For
the
this
wide
for
receiver,
this season, but those franchise tags get really expensive in the second year.
yes,
So yeah, if you have to use it multiple times without working out a longer term deal, then it gets very pricey.
Justin Jefferson supposedly also wants out of Minnesota. That's also, but the Chiefs don't have enough money to really sign the big
Yeah,
though. So, or if they do, they'd have to get rid of Chris Jones to sign somebody like Jefferson,
yeah.
which
Well, I
they
think
would.
Mahomes is likely to restructure his deal again and take most of his salary, like this is signing bonus, and that kind of stuff usually happens as we get closer to the signing dates.
Yeah,
So yeah, I
and
mean, the Chiefs will end up with a little bit more cap space by making a few different roster moves. Like they may cut Amenihue officially, I think,
yeah,
because
that
he's
would
going
be
to be
tough.
injured for the year.
Yeah,
It's one of those
hopefully
things
they.
that like he's probably not going to be
Mhm.
able to be available, so they may have to use some kind of, either injury designation or outright, release him if they had to, but it's not usually It's usually frowned upon to do that to players, but
Yeah.
sometimes they don't really have much of a choice.
Yeah, it's hard to yeah, it's tough business, and the Chiefs, also we aren't sure who they're going to draft, but they are not, at least at this point, without any compensation, maybe in the form of a Sneed trade. They're drafting at the end of each round, so it's hard to
Right.
get really high impact players that far back. They drafted Rashid Rice in the second round this past year, and they traded up to get Trent McDuffie, and Carl Aftis was a first round pick a couple of years ago now, at the end of round one. But it's hard to hit on all those compared if you're drafting top 10, you have more of a proven commodity and somebody that could be, or maybe almost ought to be, a star in the league.
A near sure thing, if not a full-on
Yeah.
star. Right.
Yeah. Fortunately, it seems like maybe some of the positions of need that the Chiefs need, if they're going to get an offensive tackle, or if they're going to get a wide receiver, those are fairly deep position groups this year. So maybe they'll have a decent player drop down uh, to them at 32. But we're still ways off we won't need to do our mock drafts
Right.
just yet. But um, I
I
don't
mean,
know if
the
we.
Chiefs do only have picks in the first 5 rounds, even. They don't have any draft picks at all in the last 2 rounds, I think, of this season. So
But I think supposedly, from what I've heard, though, late round draft picks in this particular draft are not worth as much as in previous drafts, because more people are staying in school that would have normally declared because of NIL money. So,
yeah,
um,
when I
so
think
like,
some of those players got bonus years from the COVID season, that may be coming up, maybe for some of
yeah,
them.
that's about to end as well, I
Yeah,
think. But I think because the NIL money is so good, there are fewer juniors and uh, declaring early now. So like so maybe it'll even out as time goes on, because it'll just bump the can down the road. But maybe this is maybe the first year you see that there were fewer players I think there are fewer underclassmen that declared this year than
oh,
in previous years. And I think it's basically NIL money that is dictating that.
hmm.
So the draft might not be quite as deep as it was, as it sometimes was. So maybe having a sixth and seventh round pick is maybe more like an undrafted free agent.
Yeah. Do you think you'll see more players like not hire an agent, or can you do that? Can you like enter the draft but not hire an agent and still go back to college?
I
Or
think,
once you
but I
declare, does that mean you can't go back? I don't remember how the rules are set for college now.
yeah, I don't know exactly how they do it either.
It
I
used
think,
to be like if you hired an agent that signaled that
yeah, I haven't heard
you
of any
couldn't go back,
player
basically,
get drafted though in the
and then
last
not
many
sign.
years that did not end up playing for the team, because you don't really get holdouts anymore either for rookie contracts, because they're dictated so much by the collective bargaining agreement now. So like there is just a salary. You'll hear
Yeah.
like Caleb Williams try to say like, oh, I want to be part owner of a team or something like that. That's not going to happen. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah,
yeah,
the slot number dictates the salary, so it doesn't
yeah,
matter. There's no real negotiation. Yeah. Players can try to dissuade a team from picking them, but that doesn't mean that the team has to listen to it.
yeah, yeah. I think they have to sit out a whole year if they don't. Um,
Yeah.
and then I'm not sure what happens if they re-enter the draft or not. But I haven't heard of any players doing it. Baseball, they do that all the time, but I think the NFL, I haven't heard anybody do something
It's
like
been a
that.
while since a story like that's come up that I've been aware of it all. So yeah.
Speaking of baseball, do you want to start talking about the Royals? We'll talk more about the NFL free agent period and salary cap issues and the draft over the next several weeks as well. But we're also approaching baseball season. We started our look at the Royals during spring training last week, talking about the starting pitchers, start the rotation possibilities. Today we'll talk about the bullpen possibilities before moving on to the position players next week. Um, so do you want to just dive in, or do you have an overall assessment of what the potential bullpen might look like next year? Do you think it's going to be
Let me just
stronger
want to
than it was
say
this past
first that yeah, like maybe just like lead in that last season the bullpen was an absolute mess,
Yeah, it was really bad.
and many of the players that were on the roster last season are no longer still with the team. So this is a very different looking bullpen than it was last year. I did a quick check just before we jumped on this for this episode. I just thought it was pretty amazing that the Royals actually used 31 different pitchers at the reliever pitch spot last season, which seems like a huge number.
That's a lot.
31. Yeah. So what we're
More
talking
than
about,
yeah, it's more than
three
they were
plus
active
deep.
roster size,
Yeah.
and it's about
Just
four
in
times what the
relievers.
bullpen, 3.5 to 4 times what the normal bullpen size is on the 26-man roster. Usually it's you have 5 starters and then 8 relievers or 9 relievers to make either 13 or 14 pitchers total. So, it's almost as if every player got injured and their backup got injured and their backup got injured. And then, the fourth string played for half
Yeah.
of them. So
It
that's a
wasn't all
lot of
injuries though. It was a lot of it was just poor play, and then
attrition. There were some
playing. Yeah.
trades. Got
There were some
Chapman traded,
trades. Yeah.
and fees, a few of the team things like that. But yeah, a lot of it was just poor play. We're just trying to find anybody that can be serviceable, and maybe this year they have enough guys that they think can be serviceable.
They
No, I
brought they
feel like
brought in a couple more veteran type players that have had more success.
mhm.
Do you think any of those guys are the answer, a long-term solution for the bullpen, or do you think maybe those are just potential trade bait as the season develops?
I don't think any of the players are necessarily long term, but I don't think they're necessarily just trade bait either. I think they're sort of guys that could pitch for maybe another year or two, uh, even if they only signed a year contract here or there.
Yeah.
Maybe, I think Will Smith is the oldest. I think he's 34. He's the oldest on now on the roster, but he was originally a Royal. At least he
Hmm.
made his major league debut for the Royals back in 2012. Um, I don't know if you remember, he was traded to the Royals from the Angels, along with, you remember Sean O'Sullivan? You remember him? And he was traded for Alberto Callaspo.
Oh,
So that he was um, there in that kind of early run up to where the Royals started to get good, but then got traded before the World Series years. Um,
then he ended up becoming a closer for a number of years and was quite good. And it seemed almost like
I'll start with the
too bad
Giants.
that the Royals had moved on from him so quickly. They
Yeah,
probably could have used an arm, at some point along the way.
yeah.
But
Especially after the bullpen faded with the demise of HDH and but um, but Will Smith also has won the last 3 World Series, so that's a good sign for the Royals. He
oh
won
man,
in 2021 with Atlanta, he won with Houston in 22, and he won with Texas last year. So this might mean that the Royals are going to win the World Series. Um, he pitched 57 innings last year, 55 strikeouts. 4.4 ERA, not amazing, but 22 saves for Texas. So he was a solid reliever. Hopefully he can repeat that, or maybe even slightly better stats for the Royals. Do you think he's going to be the closer, or is there a closer that's defined for the Royals yet?
that's what's really tricky to try to predict on the Royals is what are the Royals, management considering doing. Last year they did basically all of the bullpen positions were more or less, by committee. And so there weren't really defined roles at any point during the season, which is something that I think doesn't look very good on the roster, especially when you have, players that are probably looking for maybe more consistency from like where they're going to be used in the games. But it seemed very, very random. Like nobody was the true closer. They'd maybe get a save one day and then they'd be pitching in the fifth inning the next. So you would hope that since they've added Will Smith, that maybe they'll just say, okay, you're the closer, and then if somebody else challenges you for it, they can, try to take it away from you if they play really well. That's kind of what I would hope they would do, more like a king of the hill sort of thing. Like maybe like an internal kind of competition for the premier type roles. I would hope that they would do something like that just because I mean some of these seasons get really long and especially if the team is not great right out the bat, which I don't think you expect them to be. Sometimes those things like can help, drive the club forward at least anyway. And maybe like the fans will latch on to somebody or some of these competitions internally to find something to enjoy out of the season if it's another one of those long ones.
Yeah, I think maybe you said because you said we talked about how the bullpen was so bad last year. Maybe it wasn't just the pitchers that were bad, but it was also the managerial usage of those pitchers that contributed to how bad they were. And so if there had been, at least regular usage, they could have settled into their roles and at least been maybe a mediocre bullpen rather than a terrible uh bullpen. You also mentioned
100% is what I would agree with that, Mike. So that's
You also mentioned King of the Hill, which made me think of Texas, which is where Will Smith came from Texas Rangers. And another big pickup, it seems like Chris Stratton came from the Rangers last year.
Mhm.
Uh, Almost he's 33. He pitched more than 82 innings, 3.92 ERA, 81 strikeouts for both St. Louis and then Texas when he
Mm.
finished the season in Texas. So he was a former first round pick by the Giants in 2012. So uh, somebody who has a pedigree as a good relief pitcher. He might be a good setup guy or yeah, especially because Will Smith's left-handed. You might not want. Maybe you would say, well, maybe we don't want to waste a left-handed pitcher as our closer. We want to maybe have a lefty as more of a situational
Mm.
uh,
And
guy
they're
because
not
there
and
aren't
they're
a whole
not
lot.
deep at the lefty position.
No,
So I think they only have a couple of left-handed arms in the pen this season at all. So
besides, yeah, I counted Veneziano and Angel Zerpa were the two other lefties, and
I
both
think
of them
that's
were
it.
rookies last year, and Veneziano only pitched like two and a third innings,
Yeah.
and Zerpa is still pretty young, but he had 40 over 42 innings, but 4.85 ERA. So his ERA was rather high, but it was only his first year.
Well, he's
Zerpa,
another guy that was jerked around because he came in a few times situationally, like he got called up from Double A to start the back end of a doubleheader and was great. Like he got like 6 innings, out of a start from somebody that had never seen even Triple A pitching before. Like Triple A, hitters, had not faced this guy before, and he did quite well against the major league players. And he was only like 19 or something when they asked him to do that. I think he's 23, 22, 23 now.
I think he just turned 24, so
Okay, so because I mean that was several years ago, and then I think he
he
missed
was
an entire
yeah,
season with an injury
yeah,
maybe 2 years ago, and then last year he pitched a little bit at the major league level again. So, but they
yeah.
kind of jerked him around though. It didn't seem like they wanted to use him in a defined role. Like he'd start one day and then he'd be pitching in the middle of the bullpen, which is okay for a young guy, but if you think he's going to be a starter, maybe use him as a starter and instead of having a bullpen game, we have an opener. Just use this guy.
Yeah, Zerpa, yeah, he was. The Royals signed him as like a kid out of the Dominican Republic. They must have thought he was going to be maybe potentially pretty good. So they've had he's been in the organization about 7 or 8 years now. So maybe he'll stick with the big league club out of camp if they want to use him as the lefty. I think Veneziano could also maybe be that potential lefty if they don't use Smith. But yeah, you're right. There aren't that many left-handed pitchers on the 40-man roster. It's almost all righties.
Yeah,
Uh,
and Veneziano was mostly a starter, at least at the minor league level. He did throw 132 innings last season, so that's not accumulating that number of innings from the bullpen.
no,
So if
yeah.
they use him this year at the major league level, yeah, maybe he'll come up late, just to get a little taste of major leagues. But I would assume that they want him to remain in the rotation future at least anyway. So maybe they'll use him as a reliever briefly to get him a little more experience at the major league hitters, and then have him possibly fight for the rotation spot next year.
Yeah. I think that sounds about right for him. Yeah, because I don't think they've abandoned him as a potential starter,
Yeah.
but and that's why I think that's why they brought in some other free agents from or traded for players from other teams. They brought they mentioned they oh we mentioned John Schreiber they brought in from Boston. They traded another minor league pitcher, David Sandlin, for him. He was he's played for the Tigers. He also pitched last year for the Red Sox the last couple of years. Um, 3.86 ERA last year, 46 plus innings, 53 strikeouts, so more than a strikeout per inning. So
Mhm.
uh, he's a potential decent bullpen piece, Schreiber. Um,
He became the player with the highest WAR from last season in the bullpen, in the current Royals bullpen. If you look at just last year's stats,
yeah, so maybe he'll be maybe he'd be the closer, you think, if he's the
maybe, yeah.
top guy, or maybe it would be when the other guy they brought in was Nick Anderson, who pitched with Atlanta last year, 36 strikeouts in 35 innings,
Mhm.
about a even 3 ERA almost. So he's also been around for Miami and Tampa. So I guess he's only pitched in the Southeast so far, but maybe he'll adjust to the Midwest. He's 33, so he's a veteran too. So they have one, two, three, four guys 30 and over that might be in the bullpen. So that's
Yeah.
maybe you might think that's pretty good, especially if you want to have a veteran presence and people that have been there before and not just rely on uh developing young guys. But you can also say, well, maybe that's just keeping the young guys from developing too. But
Yeah.
I think it's nice to have a mix of different types of guys in the bullpen.
Yeah, and hopefully some of the younger guys, learn from having some of these, different veterans in the bullpen with them, not just as, the coaching staff that they have around them, but also, some of these veteran players. But maybe, allows Zerpa to start the year at AAA and work on either stretching out to be a more consistent starter or have him fully convert to the bullpen and have him throw as hard as he can for an inning and maybe he's a potential closer in the future too. So having some of those veterans, I think in the bullpen, gives you the flexibility as a team at least to decide what you want to do, maybe push these guys towards the future that you think fits them best in,
Yeah.
as a piece in your, puzzle that makes up that bullpen. Because they have a lot of work to do to figure out how this works at the major league level.
Yeah, it's gonna be hard to find those pieces and make sure which ones go there. We haven't mentioned the one guy who's basically guaranteed a spot in the bullpen. Uh, and that's Matt Sauer, 25-year-old right-hand pitcher, drafted by the
Guaranteed
Yankees.
for like technical reason though, yes.
Yes, he drafted by the Yankees in the second round, 2017. But he was the Rule 5 draft pick this year, so he has to remain on the active roster, or else he has to go back to the Yankees. So they're gonna want to keep him, even if he doesn't pitch very much. He'll have a spot on the bench. So maybe he'll be a good pick. Directly from the Yankees. The Yankees have a lot of good players, so maybe you think, okay, well, even he might have maybe not been good enough or just been blocked by certain players on the Yankees.
Hmm.
He might actually be a pretty good player for the Royals. He's not terribly young. He's 25, so it's not like he's some 19-year-old kid that they're trying to um, bring up. So he's he might that might be a he might be he's definitely on the roster. How much he pitches is maybe up in the air.
And he was a starter, seems like mostly at the minor league level last season. So he had 74 innings, 93 strikeouts, which is pretty decent.
That's very high. Yeah, if you get
Yeah.
well over one strikeout an innings is really good. So
Yeah.
even in today's strikeout heavy environment, it's still pretty good.
Yeah. But one of those easy things to look at as a metric, trying to evaluate minor league players is like if they can't strike out minor league hitters, they're not going to strike out major league hitters. So, you know, if they're averaging more than one an inning, they have a chance to be around that one an inning. I think at the major league level, at least they have a chance.
Yeah.
But if they're, like at a half per inning, It's not going up.
No, unless they're like a real ground ball pitcher, you want somebody, at least in this day and age,
It doesn't
that
mean they
can.
can't be effective. It's just they're not going to be striking people out.
Yeah, they can induce weak contact.
Yeah.
But that's getting rarer as this kind of this era of launch angles and spin rate and things like that have been introduced into the world of analytics and the kind of mainstream baseball world. Uh, Basically, there are a lot more strikeouts than there used to be, and those are the maybe the most important types of outs that you can get for pitchers because it's you don't have to rely on potentially shaky defense
Mm.
or anything like or chance or anything like that if you get a strikeout.
Yeah. Do you think the Royals should look for one of those like gimmicky type pitchers that the Royals had somebody in the minor league system a few years ago that was like nickname was like Disco
Oh,
because
Disco Hayes, right? Something Hayes.
why was that his nickname?
Because he pitched because he was his velocity was in the 70s, I think. That's why he
Yes.
was called.
Like bravo on the nickname people on that. That was fantastic.
They also had like Rowdy Hardy, if you remember him
Yeah.
from several years past as well. That was low velocity pitcher that maybe was a finesse guy, but it seems like most of the guys that the Royals have, they're all kind of big, powerful. There's like two guys that the Royals might have that were rookies last year with the Royals, Stephen Cruz and James MacArthur, that are both 6'7", so they're powerful. I mean, they're going to be power pitchers, but they only pitched a handful of innings last year. Cruz came over as part of the Michael Taylor trade with the Twins. Um, MacArthur was an interesting story. Um, he had a 4.63 ERA in 23 and a third innings, but what was unusual about his ERA, Andrew?
Well, yeah, especially because yeah, he had such a disastrous initial appearance that he gave up, I think, 7 earned runs in his first inning in the major leagues.
Yes.
So he was saddled with a 63 ERA that he took the whole season to work down to 4.5, which is respectable, I think, really for the year. But if you omit that one inning, his
Yeah,
ERA was quite good on the year.
he only allowed 5 earned runs in his next 22 and a third innings. So his ERA would have been around 2 or so or close to that.
Yeah, just a hair above 2, I think. Yeah. Very impressive though. Lots of strikeouts too in that final stretch. Yeah, because he got blown up, sent back to AAA, came back I think one more time, was a little better. I think he made the one little brief stop back at AAA, and then came back and was just lights out for the rest of the season. It was just a fantastic performance for the rest of the year. It was almost too bad that they didn't, throw him into the closer role to finish the season because he was, killing it. Like he'd come in, it was lights out, and it
yeah,
was
he was sort of the Reagans of the bullpen,
yeah.
the way it turned out.
Cycle through enough players, sometimes you find these guys, and yeah.
Yeah.
But they had to cycle through him more than once to get him, to land at where he finished the season. So, maybe it was good they didn't abandon him after his one inning, right? Which
Mhm.
is something that, we've seen from the Royals in the past. Sometimes a guy comes up and he only gets one shot, and that if he completely
Yeah.
missed that opportunity, then may not make it back. So, yeah.
Any other guys that we haven't named yet that you're thinking as possibilities for the bullpen?
Well, they have some guys that are kind of working their way back. Like Jake Brent's had been injured before, and I think he's, maybe just trying to like work his way back, hopefully to the major league level. We'll to see how that goes. And then they've got some younger players that are, maybe trying to break in during the course of the season, like Jonathan Bolin or Will Klein. Josh Taylor had some appearances last year, was just kind of mediocre. Uh, And by mediocre, I mean not very good, like an 8+ ERA for the season. But he's around. Maybe he's improved in the
Yeah.
offseason.
Mhm.
Uh, and then Alec Marsh is around, and Carlos Hernandez maybe in the bullpen also.
Yeah, we mentioned Carl Hernandez last week, and we both I think of him as a pretty good starter, but the Royals don't seem to think of him as a good
Yeah,
starter. They want to see him in the bullpen, but he pitched a lot last year with the Royals. He had a 1-10 record, which was not very good, but 70 innings pitched, so he was very active out of the bullpen. But
Mm.
hopefully lower that ERA down from an over 5 to somewhere in the threes or below. But yeah, I think Hernandez is maybe destined to be long relief for the Royals, or
It seems like where they're pushing him towards, but that doesn't mean they, will. Sometimes you start guys in a long relief position and work them out to, you know, lengthen their appearances out until they're back to being starters again. So, he may be like a spot starter if the situation arises. So without having to, run that train back and forth from Omaha to KC to find a fifth guy, sometimes that guy can just fill in whenever necessary. So
yeah.
hopefully he'll be in kind of that role as the season goes on. It'd be nice to see him earn the spot back in the rotation as the season goes on.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with the bullpen. There seems like there's at least several decent options, at least at this part of the like. So maybe more than what there seemed to be last year. Just like the rotation, there seems to be more options than what there seemed to be last year. So it seems like in terms of volume, at least maybe a couple of those rotation guys who don't pan out will also fall back into the bullpen if it's
Mm.
like um, Daniel Lynch or maybe Chris Bubich when he comes back will end up being in the bullpen. Um, uh, Hopefully Jordan Lyles won't be a starter. It might be in the bullpen, therefore
He's
might be
going to
in the
be a
bullpen.
starter, Mike. He's going to have to get used to it. He's going to be there. And he's gonna go 6 innings every time, no matter how many runs he gives them.
Yeah.
But it does seem like the Royals have like reloaded their bullpen and the rotation too, to like where they now have guys that can actually get strikeouts. And that's been one of their weakest like statistical areas that all of their pitchers have had problems with. Like they just are not a strikeout team. They tend to be in the bottom, handful of teams in the entire major leagues with strikeouts. And maybe they're trying to make their move up finally after many, many, many years of being in that, cellar.
Yeah, since basically the glory days of the mid teens, they've had bullpens that haven't been as strong. That was one of what we thought Dayton Moore's strength was assembling a great bullpen. And that was true for much of his career, but it didn't really pan out the last few years, and then the Piccolo years haven't been much better either. But maybe this is the year where that ends up turning around.
But really, even the Wade Davis in the bullpen was not strategically a good move financially, especially because they were paying him starter money, even though Tampa already knew he couldn't be a starter anymore. And the Royals signed him as the starter to try to make him back into a starter instead of just like leaving him as the closer that Tampa showed he was quite good at. And so they paid him like a starter, and which made him basically untradeable. And that's actually what was like lucky for the Royals is that they weren't able to move him because nobody wanted to pay that much for a relief pitcher that may or may
Yeah.
not be a starter because he could
At
may
least
or
not
may
that
not
much
be a
for
closer because he wasn't the best relief pitcher on the Royals
yeah.
roster.
Until they knew that he was Wade Davis, the sub 1 ERA closer, they weren't going to trade for him. And then eventually that happened, and then
when his when his the number of years were short enough that the deal wasn't so lopsided for a relief pitcher anymore, right? So it wasn't
And they got
on
Soler out of
paper,
the
it
deal.
was not a good signing for
Yeah.
the Royals, but it worked out okay.
When they needed to trade him, they got Jorge Soler, who actually worked out to be pretty good for a couple of years there.
Briefly, even
But
held the Royals club record for home runs. Then
yeah, he
Brief,
surpassed.
briefly,
We've seen briefly. There's one of those things where Steve Alboni's record lasted for so long, but then we saw Moustakas break it. We saw Soler shatter it, and then we saw uh,
Sal
uh, Sal Perez
topping
just
it. Yeah, even after
top,
that,
top
yeah.
it even more. So like now, it's still sub 50, which is I think lower than most teams have, but it's 40, I think 48 was that's what
I think so.
Salvi hit.
And it was the low. I mean, when it was 38, I think when it was Balboni's 38 was the lowest.
36. He had 36 Balboni.
36. Yeah.
I think Moustakas maybe hit 38.
Yeah. But at that time it was the lowest of any club, the
Mhm.
lowest most home runs in a season total for
Yeah.
any team. I'm not sure if they're still down there or not. If somebody else, but does everybody
Yeah, I
have?
don't know what the lowest.
Maybe that's something we'll have to look up and have the
We'll have to
trivia
look
question
up. We'll have to look up
next week.
between now and next week's episode
Yeah.
of the One Trick Power. Do we have anything
Well,
else to add?
since we'll be doing we'll start with the hitters next week, I guess, right? So we'll be looking at
Yeah,
what do we do? Infield, outfield next week. What's
I guess go infield. We'll just go infield and then outfield because we'll
sure.
move from in to out.
Yeah. Now
So,
do we include the DH in the infield or the outfield?
well, I think I don't know if we have a designated DH. I think the DHs are going to be like if it's going to be Salvi, he's an
Possibly
in,
by committee. Yeah. Also, who needs a
uh,
day off? Yeah.
or it's Pasquantino, he's an infielder, or I guess Melendez or something. He's out. Like now become an outfielder. So
Yeah.
whoever comes to DH is going to come from a position. I don't think he's just going to be a designated DH.
Yeah.
Uh, like O'Hearn or somebody the Royals have had before.
Yeah.
O'Hearn played a lot of first base, so
Yeah. Yeah. And ended up being a cleanup hitter on a playoff team immediately
yeah.
after the so stupid.
Yeah.
So you used so poorly, but we can talk about that next week on our infielders discussion.
Infield show. Should we wrap up this week's episode? Or
I think
I think
so.
we're
Well,
under that hour.
maybe just as a final question on this, yeah. Do you feel more confident in this year's bullpen than last year's bullpen at the beginning of the season?
I guess I do. I feel a little weird that I am more confident because I think I was fairly confident that the Royals would be decent last year, and it
Yeah,
turned out to be terrible. So I feel like I'm just it's just a Charlie Brown situation trying to kick the football that it looks like it's going to be okay, but it's going to turn out terribly. But I do feel somewhat optimistic about the Royals bullpen situation. I think they brought in enough free agents that at least a couple of those are going to turn out okay. And I think they have enough internal options that at least a few of those are going to be okay. So if you
yeah,
have six decent relievers, I think that's even if you even have a staff of 8 or 9, even if you have two kind of iffy ones, you need to trot out relievers when you're losing just as much as you do when you're winning. So um
but using them in inappropriate, and it goes back to the same thing that we've kind of been harping on for the last, two of these that we've done two. That it seems as though the players may have improved, but it's still, the outcome is going to be really dependent on how the Royals management uses these players. And if they use them wisely, then they should be able to get more out of them than what the expectation is, even. So I'm not confident in that until we start the season. I do think on paper, this bullpen seems to be stronger than last year's opening day bullpen.
agreed.
With the exception of probably, not having Chapman,
Yeah,
Rawls,
man.
in the bullpen because he was clearly the bright spot in that offseason acquisition group.
Yeah,
So
he was a proven commodity.
yeah,
And flamethrower.
trying to work his
But
way back. Didn't have a great season the year before, but yeah.
yeah, but I think the Royals have a good shot this year of having several serviceable relievers, which is I think they didn't put all their eggs in one basket kind of like they did last year with Chapman and just kind of hoped that some of the homegrown guys would do it. They have more proven commodities, Smith and Schreiber and Stratton, um, Anderson. Um, yeah,
And that seems to be a pretty strong core, and those are all new guys. So that's
yeah,
yeah has to
yeah.
be an improvement over last year, right? I mean, right?
Well, yeah, you'd think, yeah,
Please.
of course, but you would think that you would think that they would just at least kind of slouch back towards the mean. Uh, yeah,
That's the hope, at least. Yes,
let's hope. Speaking of slouching, should we slouch towards the end of our episode this week?
I think so.
Okay.
We may have kept
Well,
this one under an hour even.
I think we did. We did. I think we're only. I think we're about the 54-ish minute mark. If
Ooh,
I'm. Uh,
efficient use
so
of time.
yeah, it's very efficient. We've really used our words carefully, wisely, and judiciously. Uh, I think this episode, and it's been all killer, no filler, and that's what you probably come to expect that though here at the One Trick Power Hour. Even our episodes balloon to 2 hours or something like that, they're still full of trenchant insight and apt comparisons, pertinent information that you can take to the bank and to the water cooler or wherever you want to take this information and use it uh, to your benefit. So we hope that you found today's episode equally enlightening, and we'll return next week with more Chiefs and NFL news, more Royals coverage, and more general sports info. Maybe we'll also talk a little bit more about college basketball as those conference tournaments and the run up to the NCAA tournament are quickly upon us. So
Time for some more predictions. We haven't done those in a while.
we'll have lots of predictions, maybe even some betting. We'll see. Um, we'll see how that turns out. So you'll just tune in next week. Uh, and as always, I am Dr. Michael Werman. He is Dr. Andrew Scaff. We are the Morning Trek Power Hour. Please like and subscribe to our podcast or YouTube channel. And we thank you for your patronage, your listenership, your viewership. And we will see you next week. And until then, we will wish you a good day.